Hello and welcome to episode 3 of what is quickly becoming my favorite part of my YouTube channel, and that is my ongoing series talking about every single campaign in Dimension 20. In my first episode I covered Fantasy High, in the last episode I covered the Unsleeping City, and in this episode I'm covering what is so far my all-time favorite Dimension 20 campaign, A Crown of Candy. A Crown of Candy is the 5th season of Dimension 20, the 3rd with the Intrepid Heroes, which I'm just going through all of the Intrepid Hero campaigns first because I decided I love them so much I don't want to leave them unless I have to. And then after I'm done with all of them with Never After, I'm going to go back and watch all the side quests. But it is the 3rd season with the Intrepid Heroes, and the basic synopsis and theme of this is think Game of Thrones, but Candyland, or food pyramid. It's wild, it's ridiculous, it's completely brutal and depressing and dark at times. I watched all 17 of these episodes in like 3 weeks, which is insane when you really break down the hours invested. Crown of Candy is set in the world of Calorum. Basically, like I said, Game of Thrones, but food. Every single kingdom is a different food group. You have meats, candies, vegetables, fruits, breads, dairies. And we are following the Rox family, which rule over Candia, the obvious candy realm of Calorum. And this is set 20 years after the war known as the Great Ravening. And following the Rox family, they have to go down to the capital of Calorum to find out who the new emperor of Calorum is now that the old emperor is on his deathbed. And it is widely assumed that King Amathar of Candia will take over the helm as the new emperor. But obviously it doesn't go that way, and from this point forward, I'm going to be giving lots and lots of spoilers. I don't often give spoiler warnings, especially for these campaigns, but this is the first one that I feel like a spoiler warning is 100% necessary because there's certain story elements of this that will ruin the entire campaign for you if you haven't seen it yet. So if that is enough for you to go watch the campaign, please go invest 34 hours of your time and then come back and push play on this video again. So it's very obvious that this campaign is heavily not only inspired by, but based on Game of Thrones. And it's so obvious from the very beginning when you get the opening title sequence and the font of this and the map layout. But more than that, story elements of Game of Thrones are straight up just lifted straight out and put into the world of Calorum. Like when the Rox family is in the capital and they're finding out who the new emperor is, the Rox family is betrayed, and much like Ned Stark, King Amathar is taken off of his throne of Candia, and the whole of the country is set into a rebellion against the rest of the realm. This happens by a betrayal from somebody that he thought was close to him and loyal to his house.
Your Holiness, my father, the Emperor Gustavo Ivano, named Senator Chibata of Silesia as concordant emperor.
Liar!
Gasps, 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 gasps.
As for the characters, Liam is a ward of the Rox family from his rebel father, Duke Jawbreaker from the mountains of Candia, and he is a direct link to Theon from Game of Thrones. You have the twin sisters being direct carryovers of Arya, who have no desire for the throne or the royal life in any kind of way and rebel against it in any way they possibly can.
Little lady shouldn't play with swords.
I wasn't playing. And I don't want to be a lady.
King Amathar, funnily enough, is both like Jon Stark and Ned.
I'm not a Stark.
In the fact that he is this warrior that has no desire for this throne, but he is also like Jon in different ways that I will get to later on in this. King Amathar and Queen Caramelinda have a political marriage, much like Ned and his wife, Catelyn Stark, but also incredibly similar to them, King Amathar was not originally meant to be the husband of Caramelinda, just like Catelyn wasn't. Caramelinda was meant to be the wife of his older sister, but after all of his older sisters got wiped out and he became the king of Candia, to maintain a political alliance, they had the marriage, which is so incredibly directly from them that it cannot be looked past. Queen Saccharina is such a direct translation over from Queen Daenerys, straight down to her having a dragon being the actual heir to the throne, until, and this is where it comes back to Amathar being also like Jon, it is discovered that Amathar is actually the real heir to the throne that he already had. Those are just the big things. There are so many small lifts straight from Game of Thrones. Like, can you remember that episode of Game of Thrones where Arya was looking on and seeing them do like a play of her family and the fall of her family? Yeah, and there's like a puppet history thing of the same exact thing.
Welcome one and all to Puppet History! Today we'll be taking a deep diving, ever-winding look into yet another chapter in the heavy book we call history.
I don't mind it. I think it's really cool. I actually had a lot of fun looking out for all of these pulls from Game of Thrones. I just wanted to talk about just how much of this is directly inspired from it. You know? Moving on to the characters, and honestly, I think these are the best characters that I've gotten so far. Granted, I'm only like 3 seasons into Dimension 20. It might get better. I'm assuming that this is top of the line so far of what I've watched because these people are just getting more comfortable. The stories are making more sense. They're getting better at role playing. Not to say they haven't already. They were phenomenal. But this one is the first where I feel like it's truly cohesive and all these characters are fully realized in ways that some of the other ones weren't, in my opinion. We have King Amethar, played by Lou Wilson, Princess Jet Rocks, played by Emily Axford, but also Queen Saccharina, played by Emily Axford. We have Chancellor Lepan Cadbury, played by Zach Oyama, but also Cumulus, played by Zach Oyama, Liam Wilhelmina, played by Ali Beardsley, Princess Ruby Rocks, played by Siobhan Thompson, and Sir Theobald Gumbar, played by Brian Murphy. And this is the very first campaign where backup characters were made from the very beginning. Every single one of these people had a backup character made from the very start of this because it was just kind of assumed that plenty of people were going to die. Ali Beardsley had Sir Amanda Mallard. Siobhan Thompson had Bitternight Darknibs. Brian Murphy had the Bubblegum Monster. Zach Oyama obviously had Cumulus Rocks, who he actually got to play. Lou Wilson had Murdo Brer. And Emily Axford had Queen Saccharina of the House Frostwhip, who she also got to play. But every single one of those characters were made from the very beginning, which was not something I actually knew until I started doing prep for this video. I just assumed that when they died, they kind of had to rush to figure out how to put somebody in the story. But almost every single one of those characters that I just listed was at least named in passing in the very first episode, which is a really cool way for them to have worked these characters in from the beginning so that it seemed natural when they eventually came into this story. And like I said, some of these characters were my all-time favorite characters. I think my favorite character of this entire campaign and any of these campaigns was Ali Beardsley's character, Liam Wilhelmina. I think I'm saying that wrong. I'm bad at pronouncing that last name. I'm gonna be honest. Wilhelmina. Liam. But Liam has this amazing character arc, being this ward of the Rocks family from his rebel father that lives in the mountains, and he doesn't really feel like he belongs to anywhere. He doesn't really feel like he's welcome at this place, being basically just a fancy captive. He loves nature, he loves seeds, he loves his pet little pig. He's just this really sweet guy, but as it goes on, he gets in all these combat situations. He goes on murdering sprees, having to stay alive and keep these people alive that have started to welcome him. After his pig Preston dies, he full on declares, hey, I'm a war guy now, and just becomes this phenomenal assassin. And Ali, like, they play this so incredibly well. Ali constantly rolls these just clutch nat 20s for story-wise, but also for amazing assassinations where they just get to go in and like disguise themselves as these villains of the story and take them out in the most cinematic possible ways.
You see, Cruller immediately looks over and says, hello, friend. Who's the hollow-eyed companion?
Who's the hottie?
Liam has changed.
And that's another thing I want to talk about. The reason Crown of Candy is so much more brutal and dangerous for these played characters is because this is the first time that Brennan is so extremely by the book. He's constantly measuring things, constantly looking up rules. Everything has to be done by the book. He doesn't pull any punches. If a character is going to die, unlike in the first episode of Fantasy High, the first combat episode at least, where 2 characters die and he comes up with some crazy reason and reinvents the whole entire story to make these 2 characters alive again.
Life for a life. Hey, Mr. Gibbons? You see Mr. Gibbons goes up and says, I'm sorry, what? And you see that Principal Eggfort takes out a gun and shoots Mr. Gibbons in the head. And then takes the gun and says, the price must be paid. Bam! And shoots himself in the head. Gorgog and Kristen, you come back to life.
What the fuck?
In this one, when people die, they're just fucking dead. So there's very real danger in the combat in this that you've never really felt in any of the other campaigns. I was never worried about any of these people dying in other campaigns. In Unsleeping City, Kugrash died at the end, but it was very much done as a story element. In this, it just happens. But that also makes it be an extremely dark campaign. Like when the first character dies, Lepan, who is a secret necromancer pretending to be a servant of the bulb for the church, this evil religious group that throughout the entire campaign they're trying to take down because they're snuffing out the magic in the world that is very prominent in Candia. And when he dies, yes, it's sad and everybody grieves from it, especially Liam because he lost his pig at the same time, and that sent him on the entire arc of being a war guy. Fucking cool. But later on, a couple episodes down the line, when Jet Rocks, one of the twin sisters, one of the princesses of Candia, gets murdered in cold blood in what is essentially a red wedding scenario where every single person in the campaign gets an assassination attempt on them. When she dies and her sister and Liam have to abandon her right before she dies and Jet tells them to run, it sends this campaign down a very dark path because there's no way story-wise to have something like that occur and have a funeral sequence and have a grieving sequence and have the twins still be alive. Heavy Fred and George energy there. George is never okay again, and either is Ruby Rocks.
Jet, the last thing you feel is a bright, warm glow on your locket of the sweetest heart. Ruby racing up the street as fast as you can. You hold fast to the locket. You sprint over the bridge. And just as you pass over the bridge, the light in the locket goes out.
Before that, this was such a fun and silly, lighthearted campaign about food. But after that, I understand why this setting of candy and food and the silliness and these avocado people and the bread and the donuts and, you know, a milk bottle and all these bits had to be in place in this ridiculous, fun setting. Because without that setting, you don't have any way to get pulled out of the dreariness of the elements of this, of the brutalness of this campaign, and the relentlessness that this family is going through to achieve their goals. And sometimes when I talk like this, I forget that I'm talking about 7 people sitting around a table playing Dungeons and Dragons, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. But I was more moved by those moments than I am in most TV shows. But because I forget that I'm watching Dimension 20, that I'm watching Dungeons and Dragons, that's where the silly campaign comes in. There's specific moments where they're having a funeral sequence, and Brennan, who I don't say often enough is the best dungeon master ever. Just phenomenal. He's amazing. Brennan Lee Mulligan, fucking awesome.
I've been mortified since I've been here. Everyone keeps talking about getting slammed down big style.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's for those people, you know. That's what they want to do. It's just not me. It's absolutely.
My head is a milk bottle, and if I were to be slammed down in any sort of meaningful way, I could die.
But anyway, there's moments where Brennan notices that everybody needs a pick-me-up, so he mentions the fact that they're in a food territory again, because nobody's picturing that in their head during the funeral. So he's like, and then the custard-filled donut comes up and lays her sword in your lap, the giant gummy bear. And there's moments like that that kind of bring the levity back to the situation that is very bleak. I do wish this was a lot longer. Like, when I said Unsleeping City, I felt could have probably been a few episodes shorter, maybe even been a side quest setting. I think this one really lends itself to being longer. 17 episodes does not feel like enough. I feel like this world, although very fleshed out, and although all of these characters are really well fleshed out, and it has some of the best villains I've ever seen, especially with Sir Carradine Deeproot and Calroy Cruller, I don't feel like this setting is explored enough. When I look at the map of Calorum, yeah, we saw a little bit of the Dairy Islands, we saw plenty of Candia, we saw a little bit of the capital. I wanted to see the Meatlands. I wanted to see the wheatlands. I wanted to see the fruit territory. I wanted to see that little like jungle they had down at the bottom. I wanted to see so much more of this explored because it was clear to me that they had preparations for all this being explored. Brennan, like I said, is a great dungeon master. He obviously probably had people and settings planned out for all of these territory, and when they're in the different territories, the lighting changes behind them in the dome. And I don't feel like 17 episodes was enough to fully flesh out Calorum. Maybe one day if they have the season 2, we'd be able to. But I don't have my hopes up. That's probably my only gripe about this, though. The ending was really well done. I was on the edge of my seat in the final episode where you had this really cool combat where it was more like a war scenario rather than individual minis fighting bad guys. And there was this constant fear in the back of your head of, ooh, Queen Saccharina and King Amethar both have rights to the throne. They both want the throne. How's this going to end up? We know that they're betraying each other and that they're lying to each other. Are we going to get the first ever playable character, unplayable character encounter? That'd be dope as shit. But they found a good way to wrap it up in the end with Amethar being the Emperor and Saccharina being the Queen of Candia. I kind of would have liked the combat, but all things considered, I like the happy ending. We needed a happy ending after the dreariness that we had in this campaign. I've already started a Starstruck Odyssey, which has a really cool story behind it. Starstruck Odyssey is based off the comic books of the same name, written by Brennan Lee Mulligan's own mother. I'm excited about that one. Everybody I talked to says that a Starstruck Odyssey was made the next one because of the sheer darkness of A Crown of Candy, so it's much more lighthearted. So that'll be my next video on Dimension 20. But thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my other videos.